Genny Rumancik is a mental health advocate, educator, and the founder of the EQ School, which offers courses and online resources to improve self awareness, emotional self management, and relational health. Her work has reached a growing audience of more than 170,000 followers on Instagram, alongside a thriving community of students and participants in her programs. Known for her grounded, compassionate teaching style, she helps people develop the emotional intelligence needed to build healthier relationships and more authentic lives. Her debut book, The Wisdom of Feeling, Finding Clarity, Courage, and Connection Through Emotional Intelligence, was released yesterday, June 16th. Genny, welcome to Surviving Roots. I'm so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations on your book, baby.
Thank you. It's definitely been a labor of love, but I'm excited to have it out in the world.
And I love the cover. It was so beautiful to read, and I really just want to dive in if you don't mind.
Of course, yeah.
So, before we go anywhere else, let's just lay the foundation for everyone listening. When you talk about emotional intelligence or EQ, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, the way that I focus on emotional intelligence and the place that we always start is like emotional intelligence is about having enough awareness of your own emotions and your own patterns and the ability to actually be present with yourself so that you can respond to your feelings and respond to your patterns and respond to the relationships and events in your life, like with intention and again, like presence and clarity. And without that relationship to self, it's really hard to do the rest of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, then how would you explain it? So, how is emotional intelligence exactly different from being self aware? Or when I hear emotional intelligence, or just being a good person?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so in my classes, we talk about it as like there's a little pyramid with
Mhm.
self-awareness at the bottom. And so the self-awareness is the foundation of like when I'm present with myself and my own feelings and my own body and my own history and my responses to the world, it gets better for me to kind of step into self-management. So actually being present with my feelings, allowing myself to feel what I need to, choosing instead of just reacting. And that helps, it starts to extend outward into my relationship. So becoming more aware of how I want to show up. And again, if I can manage myself, it helps me be more present with other people and more intentional with other people. And so it kind of like all builds from there. So it expands outward.
I love that. That's so much easier to understand. Well, I loved your book. You open with a really vivid scene at the Portland airport during the
Yeah.
holidays, and I think you recently just shared this that I just caught on Instagram, and I love it. So many of us can relate to that in some way, whether it's in traffic or a public place where you either have that moment where you can go one way or go the other. So, a stranger's small act of kindness in a moment of tension was a beautiful way how you opened the book. Why did you choose that as a doorway into this whole book?
Airport guy. He truly was a moment that like changed me. Like witnessing this person who so the story is like bottleneck in the holiday season, last zone is called, he steps in front of this woman who just is on her last nerve, like our flight had been delayed. Throws her hands up in the air. She's just throwing this little fit and he turns and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead." And she just doubled down. She was just really angry at him and I remember just watching him like take a breath and he like turned all the way around to face her and was just like, "Hey, this seems important to you. Like, it would really mean a lot to me if you would just go first." And she just like, "I'm sorry." She just deflated, she softened, and then they have this really nice conversation. And so it truly, like I talk about it a lot in my workshop with my students is like this moment of like, oh wait, that is possible because I didn't grow up in a world where I watched adults navigate conflict like that. And I didn't have examples of it. And so I would have I would have either frozen up, right? And been like, "Ugh," kind of being yelled at in public
Yeah.
or snapped at her, I've
Yeah.
done something like that. So to see someone, and then I kind of in the intro break that down into like, what are all the different pieces of parts of emotional intelligence that were in that interaction? Because that I really was like, I want to be like that. I want to be that person who actually like is the grounded adult who makes the environment feel safer for everybody present within it. Because it truly had everyone like to watch
Yeah.
someone respond like a grown up.
Oh my gosh, that's just such a beautiful moment. And honestly, that's one of my biggest goals because I can relate. I didn't see people like that growing up.
Mhm.
And especially with children now who are just watching my every move. And I just feel like in general, people are carrying so much stuff in the world and it doesn't even really have anything to do with the person who cut you off in traffic or a line, but it's just having that moment, that little pause that really holds so much power. So I loved the opening of your book. I mean, everyone can relate to that. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Well, your dedication was so beautiful to Dottie, Pam, and the eldest daughters everywhere. I love so much of your book. We need like 5. I'm still in the dedication right now, but
Thank you.
thank you for holding it all together, even though it was never yours to carry alone. And then you dedicated it to your 8-year-old self. That is such a personal opening. Can you talk
You're
about
gonna make
what
me cry now.
it's okay. I cried during I reading your book. Can you talk about what it meant to write that book and why it was so important for you to honor generations before you and then the little girl inside of you?
Yeah. Well, as you get to later in the book, I do talk about my grandma. Dottie is my grandma and Pam is my mom. Ooh, I am gonna cry. Woo. And they were just such strong women who held everything, like
Yeah.
for everybody around them. And as we get to in the book, part of it was like that was expected of me. And my mom has been really lovely as I've been like, nope, I am not going to hold everything for everyone. I get to hold what is mine and I get to like start to separate things out. So that was a big part of like what my whole journey has been about is
Mhm.
figuring out that like I really love and respect everything that they did and they really gave me the tools to be the person that I am, but then I have my part which is not taking care of everyone around me. Just creating more balance in those relationships where I get to be taken care of too because they didn't get to be taken care of. They just took
Yeah.
care of everyone else. And I think that there's a lot of women, and I think men too, but definitely a lot of women who can relate to that. And that's that kind of eldest daughter family systems kind of trope that's
Yeah.
like the oldest girl is the one who is expected to be an adult earlier than she should be an adult. And so that has been a lot of my journey is even becoming aware of that as a
Mhm.
pattern, right? And starting to see when I do it in real and I continue to like play out those patterns and notice how it impacts me and how it impacts the relationship, right? And yeah, and for 8-year-old me, like I always wanted to be a writer when I was a little girl.
I
So,
love that.
yeah,
So what would you say to her right now? The 8-year-old little girl.
I would give her just like the biggest hug and just yeah, just see her. Just let her
Yeah.
know her, I think.
That's so beautiful. Well, you are out in the world with your book, with your community of 170,000, I think more on Instagram, and your school. Most people don't just wake up one day and decide to teach emotional intelligence. So there's usually a story underneath that work. What was the moment, or was there something happening in your life where you woke up and said, "This is what I'm going to do in the world. This is what I'm going to offer."
Yeah, it was definitely a long time coming with a few false starts. But I will say, I do talk about this school that I went to called Hyper Island in Sweden. It does have a
Hmm.
silly name, but it was like a creative digital program. We were learning about design leadership. And in that program, it was very design focused, but so much of it was to be a good designer and to be a good leader in the design space, you have to know yourself and you have to know what you bring to these projects, right? And to these briefs. And you also have to work with people who are really different than you. So my cohort, we had 60 people from 25 different countries. So it was like a lot of like cultural clash and people came from very different perspectives and they encouraged us to work with the people you can't stand because that's where you're going to learn the most about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And so within that space, I feel like it was a crash course in self-awareness of like your perspective is your perspective and you have to learn how to own that. And you also have to be willing to like put it aside to see what else is going on, which was really hard and it brings up a lot of emotional stuff. And so in that program, I love the design work, which is very much brought into my school and how I work with people. But I also really love the like, oh, this is possible, like navigating conflict with other people in this way is
Yeah.
possible. And I felt like much more of a grown up after that year because I learned a lot more of how to take responsibility for myself, how to communicate. So the design stuff was great, but the program was almost like a bait and switch in which I was like, oh, I want to help other people have this kind of experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. I hope this question makes sense because it just sort of popped in my mind as you were talking. How does emotional maturity relate to emotional intelligence? Because it seems that you have to be quite mature. How does that work? Can you explain that?
It's funny, I woke up this morning just like front of mind, actually thinking about something kind of similar, thinking about how, like, when we think of IQ, like intelligence quotient and like intelligence, it almost feels like innate, like like this is who you are. And I was feeling like EQ is a lot more experiential and just continues to develop throughout our life if we're intentional with it. So I do think there's a pretty strong overlay with EQ and maturity
Okay.
at least in the way that I approach it and I'm teaching it with people, because there are a lot of people who are like, well, that person just is emotionally mature. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, we can develop self awareness. We can develop tools for managing our emotions. And especially when you understand like human development and attachment, like a
Mhm.
lot of how emotionally intelligent and attuned we are comes from what we experienced when we were younger. And the beauty is we can continue to develop that throughout life. And so actually this weekend I just went backpacking with a bunch of my girlfriends and we had a big conversation about like, as we enter our 40s, like the things that we're learning and holding now around boundaries and that like you couldn't have known this if I hadn't lived through everything before. And so that EQ can continue to grow and develop the more experience we have if we're willing to be like present with the lessons as they're
Yeah.
showing up.
So you're saying there's hope for all of us.
Yeah, that is my firm belief, but the piece is that you have to actually want it and be intentional with it.
See, I think that is so important. Can you please say that again?
Yeah, you do have to want it and you have to be intentional about creating the space to do this work on a regular basis. And that really ties into the self-awareness work because there's a lot of misconceptions about self-awareness and a lot of people think they're self-aware because they spend a lot of time in their own head. But self-awareness is it is like non-judgmental and it's this willingness to be present to like what's actually happening. And that's an ongoing daily practice. It's not a like, I'm just a self aware person. It's a like,
Yeah.
how am I taking care of myself and checking in with myself, from moment to moment?
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, I always say like, it's hard either way. You can stay stuck in the same and you can choose to live in chaos and pain and be disconnected from yourself, or you can do the hard work. Either way, it's work. It just depends on when you wake up every morning, how do you truly want to feel? Like who do you want to be in the world? And then decide and then just go be that. Go do the work because I know the emotionally immature and toxic people in my life, they are very deeply committed to not growing, not healing, and just keeping the pain and the chaos. But that's still a lot of work. So
Yeah. And I mean, it's the commitment to like, I use this like all the time with other people of like, there is a story and it is painful. And when we're focused on everybody else, we will stay in that. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But when you turn that lens around to look at yourself and be like, what is this touching in me? What is my responsibility here? What do I need to go cry and maybe stomp my feet about for a little bit so that I can come back to this in a different space? But learning how to turn that lens back to yourself, I mean, it's terrifying for people who didn't kind of grow up with mirroring or modeling about what that looks and feels like too. So I get why it is hard to get started. And I think many of us who've come to it in later life come to it because we're sick of like we're done with the old pattern. You kind of have to get to a point of like, I don't want to do this anymore.
yeah, no, 100%. And a big reason for me was I didn't want to have a life like that. So I'm like, I need to do the opposite. What is the opposite, Carrie? Okay, this is what we need to work on. So
Yeah.
I love that. Well, there's a line in your book that really stopped me because anxiety is always like a word for me. People always for the longest time, and I still sort of do, but I'm a recovering helicopter parent. I'm a recovering living in fight or flight constantly. And there's a line in your book that says anxiety is a symptom of disconnection from the self.
Hmm.
I love the way you frame that. Can you unpack that a little bit and let us know exactly what you mean and what it really looks like to then reconnect when anxiety is what you're feeling?
Yeah. I do think anxiety is this like there's a signal that something is going on and we're not actually listening to that signal, if that
Mm,
makes sense. Because
yeah.
I think of it too as so many of us have been shaped by, again, that external lens of like, who do I need to be and what do I need to do? And that keeps me safe and not listening to like, is that actually really scary to me? Right. Or does that touch on something that hurts for me? And like when we continue to ignore that, our body is letting us know, like, this doesn't feel okay on some level. I don't feel safe on some level. And that turning that lens back around to even just be present with the anxiety, we're often not given that, I think, advice. It's like, how do I get rid of this as fast as possible?
Yeah.
And that's often like a thing we talk about is like we've been conditioned in a lot of ways to be happy, to keep your chin up, to look for the silver lining. There's all of that stuff, like to just push through it. And it's like we actually have to turn that around and be like, oh, this feels really hard and scary. And that makes sense that it feels really hard and scary. I'm allowed to take a break. When we can actually meet our body, like what our body actually needs, our body's response starts to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually I can understand so much because over the years I've really been working on this idea of like carrying anxiety and feeling anxiety and things that used to really terrify me or send me over the edge. I honestly can sort of face and feel myself start to and then take a deep breath. And I'm just in terms of things that sort of would make me spiral even 2 or 3 years ago, I just don't even have the same response. I think it's just from really sitting with it and facing it. You one thing I really love that you wrote is that you write about how this generation is more self-aware than ever. We can name our triggers. We know our attachment styles. We read the books, we listen to the podcasts, we go to the seminars. But yet people still can stay stuck. So what does the gap between awareness and the actual change look like? And why do you think so many of us still land in the
Yeah.
mud?
Well, this comes back to what you were saying too a minute ago when you were talking about like, I want to be the opposite of what I experienced.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of, I mean, me too, and a lot of people that I work with. It's like we have experienced what we don't want, and we have an idea of what we do want, right? Of what it could look like. But what healing actually looks like, we can't imagine if that makes sense. It's almost like learning how to float in a pool. To actually calm your body down and be present is something you can't describe until you've experienced it. And so I think for me, a lot of this work is the, like, slowing down. It's not just understanding. It is actually, like, feeling and experiencing the work that we're doing. So it's bringing the body into the conversation as well. And I'm sorry, I might be, like, mixing a bunch of things here, but I think too, we live in the age where we've become so focused on intellectualism and understanding things that we kind of, like, over-index toward, like, if I just understand it, then I get it. But I also think emotional intelligence is this, like, Venn diagram of intelligence and logical, rational thinking, but also being fully present to my own body and my own feelings and my own signals that are telling me how I feel about this. And it's bringing those two things together to be like, well, I'm having a big reaction to this. And then I'm using what I know and understand about myself to respond to myself in an accurate way. And I think like just understanding attachment is not the practice of like, oh, I feel activated. I'm going to slow down and genuinely like, you know, we want to get rid of it as soon as possible, I think is often what we come back to. How can I just like do some, cold plunge or do something to make this
Yeah.
feeling go away? And it's like, it's not, and that's the floating piece, right? Is like to learn how to be present with it enough that like it's just a different experience to feel it safely and
Mhm.
allow it to kind of move through you. And then how you think about it changes once that activation, is soothed or is allowed to process through your body. When you calm back down, you get to think about the situation differently too.
Yeah.
I wasn't very clean, but
Well, it actually was. The way you describe it and the way you talk about it, it really is. I think I was sort of just, like, hypnotized with your words for a second because I was like, "Wow, yes, I honestly I get what you're saying. I do."
yeah. Well, just even what you were describing just then about, like, a few years later to be like, "Whoa," like, it's a different experience in my body to, like, turn and to respond instead of just yeah, like, going from the activated place. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I know it doesn't happen overnight, but it's like little by little, the little freakouts or the spiraling, like, I don't even react to.
Mhm.
It's I just feel like a different person. It's I don't know. It's crazy, but
Yeah.
I'm so happy. However I did it, those small little choices, I'll take it. Just don't ask me how.
And I think that that is actually so beautiful and so important part of this work too, because we want to understand every step in what's coming. And
Yeah.
I think not only for a healthy relationship with self, but especially for healthy relationships with other people, we have to let go of the outcome, right?
Mhm.
We actually have to
Yeah.
be present with this. Like, in hard conversations with friends and loved ones, it's like, if you need this to go a specific way, that's already kind of tanking it from the get go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is that like, I'm going to be present to self and see what happens. And that's self trust, I think.
I love that self-trust, and what you said about presence, it's so true because, I think so many people, especially in the healing space, and what I see on social media, everyone has their rituals and they're constantly observing, 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 but I always wonder from the other side of the screen, like, but are they living? Like, are they actually present in your life? You can only, write so many journal pages or put so many manifesting boards or talk about all of these goals, but like, what are you doing in your everyday life that you're actually present and possibly achieving or attracting or just being without wondering if it's going to happen tomorrow or 5 years from now? Like your
Yes.
actual life, like living it rather than just observing and talking about it.
Yeah. I love that because, like, this might sound weird at first, but like the tools are not supposed to be used forever, if that makes sense. Tools are supposed to be used to actually like create your capacity and to teach your body how to respond. So I don't know. I mean, one I think common example is like, is everyone familiar with like the compliment sandwich for giving feedback, right? This
I love
idea.
a compliment sandwich. Yeah. That's what I
Yeah.
used to use all the time.
But like it's also like if you it's very mechanical. If you're like,
Yeah.
you're great, da da da, here's the hard thing. It's supposed to be this framework that helps you understand. Start with connection. Start
Yeah.
with connecting to the person. Then start with that baseline, then go into the harder conversation and then reconnect. And so it's more of this like it helps you, but you get to be you within it. And I think that's the same for a lot of the tools that we're learning is like, yeah, use this tool to help your body figure out, oh, I can process this and to figure out the discernment of when to use it. But exactly your point, like these like really intense rituals day by day, like we're then not present, right? With what does my body need this morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well said. Well, there was a part in your book, and it reminded me of this, and I have to find it. It's like this coffee shop in Paris where you can go and you can write a letter to yourself, and they mail it 5 years from. They have like all of these shelves with these envelopes, and I don't know how they do it, but you'll receive the letter like 5 years from now. And so there was like a tender practice in your book. Is this idea of writing yourself love letters?
Yeah, and that does come from Elizabeth Gilbert because she has a whole Substack around it, and I have taken it from her because I love it. But yeah, this writing love letters to yourself, and it's I love working with people on this because you see people be like, "Ugh," like they have this resistance to just meeting yourself with kindness to start, which I think is really telling, right? It's like that's a telling that maybe we didn't get met with the kind of kindness and attunement we deserve. But the other piece of it is like you do always know what you need to hear.
Yeah.
You do on some level know like what words will hit on some level. And that's so much of this like to your point of like emotional maturity and kind of growing up work is like learning that we actually can
Hmm.
be our own best friend. We actually can be our own internal supporter. That's why I love that practice. It's kind of a way to figure out like, wait, I do actually know what I need to hear. I can tell myself those things.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said just reminds everyone, myself and everyone listening, like how much power we truly have. I guess I always thought like that's why when I'm raising my kids now, I'm trying to like, I can't teach them. I can only help activate all these little things in within them. And then hopefully they choose to carry them. But I think of like all of the things that like my parents never activated or taught me or took the time. And it's just, you feel so powerless when you come from toxic relationships or parents or upbringings, but thankfully, something clicks as you're doing the work on yourself. We're so powerful. Like, we're just a choice away of having a better life. Like, there's a lot of work that comes with each choice, but we all have this power of choice when it comes to, I mean, I believe, I feel, how we want to feel, who we want to be, and how we move through the world.
Yeah. And you touch on something important in that too, which is like when we've experienced abuse, that often disconnects us from our agency, right?
Mhm.
Our agency and our connection to self is like that, someone made us question that or disconnect from ourselves. And that's what healthy relationships help you connect to yourself and be
Yeah.
like, you are actually an important part of this relationship, which can also, yeah, I don't know, it can be helpful. It's like, oh, the road back is to me. And then that's where everything else can start.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love that you write about is a lot about self-protection versus self-connection and like how there's so many patterns that we built to keep us safe in these environments that actually weren't safe. How do people start telling the difference between this is protecting me and this is actually keeping me from the life that I want?
Yeah. I think that's a hard one. And because there's such a kind of a broad spectrum, I think. I don't know if there's an easy tell because I'm trying to think of like even with myself of like how long it took me to realize like to put down some of the protection, the armor in order to
Yeah.
see like, oh, that's what that was. That wasn't just truth. That wasn't just reality. That was me stopping myself from experiencing more pain. Yeah. Well, and this is again coming back to sometimes bringing in the body and bringing in
Mhm.
like noticing where we hold tension or where we're pushing back. Like that has also been really helpful for me to notice like when I feel soft and open versus when there is any sort of like bracing or tension or shutting down or activation. That can also be one of those ways that like when we learn how to read our own signals.
Mhm.
I might not intellectually even understand what that is or why that's there, but it is
Mhm.
giving me information and I can be present with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. For the longest time, I like labeled myself of having social anxiety. But what I realized was, which I'm 48, so this just really came to a realization at the beginning of last year that I don't have social anxiety. I actually really like to socialize, but it was the female groups I was surrounding myself with or just being close with women because I could never trust my mother and I had such a deep buried mother wound. I didn't realize I don't have social anxiety. I love talking to people. I love being out. But with groups of women, I have such a fear of trusting and really opening myself up. I realized that I was
Yeah.
trying to protect myself and really never connecting with women until really probably maybe the last maybe year or two, like really leaning in. But yeah, it took me almost, I don't know, 46 years to relate like mother wound, groups of women
Yes.
and a huge fear.
I
So
love that so much. I feel like I have a similar not with groups of women, but just with groups, is that I
yeah.
get into a group and I'm immediately like, "Oh, I'm judgmental." Oh, and I'm, like, doing all this, like, self-protection
Mm,
stuff that's taken a long time to be like, "Yeah, I don't that's me. That's mine that I'm bringing into that space."
yeah.
And one of my best friends who, like, has such a hard she's like, "Oh, I just have a hard time making friends with women." And I'm like, "You're one of the easiest people." Like, and she has the mother wound too. It's, like, really, really hard. And that's coming back to, like, how do we figure some of this stuff out is that it
Mhm.
takes that time. And in the book, I talk about one of the big pieces of self-awareness is understanding how our past shows up in our present, because
Yeah.
it does for everybody. We are shaped through relationship. And for better or for worse. And so seeing that like we bring those expectations into, our current reality, whatever that is. Like if I've been hurt in the past by groups, then when I go into a group, my body is bracing for that, even if intellectually I'm excited to be here. And becoming aware of that, as you and I both know, takes
Yeah.
some time.
Yeah. It does take time. One of the things I love though is that you said that these patterns really can stop with us. A lot of my listeners and I, we talk about breaking cycles, generational patterns, estrangement, choosing something different than what we were shown or what we grew up with. So, what does that actually require of a person? What does it cost to break these cycles or the pattern? And what does it give us back?
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I will say that. I will say it takes a lot of discomfort because when we have patterns of self-protection, I mean, and leans into like the internal family systems work, right? When we have these patterns of self-protection, there's wounding underneath that
Yeah.
habitual protection. And so to actually change some of those patterns, you actually have to process the grief or the pain around the wounding. And so it does cost the discomfort of actually letting yourself feel those things. For me, man, I'm again kind of the cycle breaker. I'm the most sensitive one in my family system. There was a lot of like being called dramatic kind of
Yeah.
things when I was younger. And like in a lot of my recent work, like for a while, like if I saw someone really cry, I just did not connect. I could have tears, but I couldn't like really
Hmm.
cry. So a big part of my work in recent years is like I can like wail now. I can really cry deeply if I need to, but there used to be so much judgment around that and around myself immediately. But part of it was that like I never got to fully process through big feelings. And it's been a slow process to feel safe enough to be like, yeah, I can actually cry when I need to. I can be present to this or feel really angry when I need to. So there's that discomfort. And then on the other side, back to like the floating analogy, it can be hard to describe, but it's almost just like you don't have to be on guard as much.
Hmm.
You get to be you, I think, a lot more. There is just a lot more like softness and kind of quiet and peace, which to me comes back to then the presence, the like actual joy of the things that I really love and connect to. And I'm more connected to when I feel lit up by something
Yeah.
and follow it through instead of like judging myself or, those protective voices kind of soften.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So well said. So I want to talk to you a little bit about boundaries because I get a lot of questions about boundaries. Like, where do I start? How do I begin to feel? How do I increase my emotional intelligence? I feel like boundaries is such a popular word on social media right now. Like, there's a script I think for boundaries in general. Your chapter on boundaries really feels something like a little different because I'd like to know, like, what do you think gets misunderstood about boundaries? And then how do you teach people to set them from a grounded place instead of a reactive place?
Yeah. Well, I feel like boundaries, it's really kind of impossible to have healthy boundaries, for lack of a better word, if you're
Mhm.
not connected to yourself and your needs and your feelings. And boundaries are not about you versus me. Like I think it's helpful to think about boundaries of like, here's what I need for us to be in healthy relationship.
Mhm.
Right? And I think I love to describe them as almost like there's this space between me and you're on this side and I'm on this side, and we actually get to, like, see each other more clearly, and my boundaries are like, what do I need to actually stay connected to myself, and what do you need to stay connected to yourself? And it's just like we're communicating about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not about I'm telling you what you can't do. And I think that the more connected we are to self, the more yeah, it's like this language is about me. It's not about you. It's about what
Yeah.
I need. And I
Yeah.
think the healthiest boundaries can hold space for the other person's feelings and perspectives too. Like it makes
Mhm.
sense if you're hurt by that, if I can't
Yeah.
show up for you in that way. And I get that. And like there is discomfort in boundaries.
Yeah. I think the way you just described it, I mean, is really saying that boundaries are so a relationship can go both ways. Like boundaries are not trying to shut people out or keep them away. Boundaries are a way for the relationship to like improve and get better. I think the problem is that if someone gets defensive and sees it as a personal attack and doesn't maybe have the maturity or the emotional intelligence to see that, someone is you're hurting someone or they're trying to work with you, then I think that's when boundaries explode into the you're too sensitive, you're dramatic, and that's just not a two-way relationship. I wish more people could see that the boundaries are a way to keep people like in our lives, not
Yeah.
shut them out.
Well, and like the two pieces to that one are like, again, if you aren't grounded and connected to self, if you need somebody to approve your boundaries, you're gonna have a lot harder time having them,
Yeah.
right? If I
Yeah.
need you to be
Yeah.
approve this, then it's really hard for me to like take that space I need for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the coming back to when you were asking about the cost of this work is like really deep relationships. There is inherent discomfort when we're finding out where we if there's never any conflict or never any like tension, a
Yeah.
place where we rub up against each other in a relationship, somebody's not being honest.
Yeah.
'Cause we should all be different. We do all have differences. We all from day to day, where we are in this moment is going to be different, and that's human. And so part of a healthy relationship is like, can I sit with the discomfort of you not liking this? And to your point, the other thing that I thought of as you were saying that is like what has helped me is like I've gotten better at zooming the lens out of like this person may be hurt in this moment, but give it time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if I don't react to that as though I need to fix it, if I can stay my grounded, like, "I love you and I'm here," and you're allowed to have those feelings about that, that, like, leaves space for something else to happen,
Yeah.
as opposed to then it turns into a fight where you shouldn't feel that way or. Mhm.
Exactly. I love the way you talk about this stuff. I have to say it's sometimes it's rare when you read a book by someone and then you actually talk to them and they're the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Like your energy, you're so peaceful, you're calm, and it's just I'm absorbing everything that you're saying, and it's just like when I was reading your book, and I think that's what makes your voice and your approach just so I don't know if it's compassionate, but it's just so welcoming no matter where you're at in your healing, whether you're on your millionth step or your first step. I think that's why I just connected to your book so much. Thank you. If Okay, so everyone listening today, if they could take one thing from our conversation, a shift, a practice, a new way of looking at themselves, what would you most want them to leave with?
Funny because I think it's boring and they might not like it, but it truly is to, like, slow down, and just notice your own responses. Like, that's what we start with in my self-awareness is just, like, every day, a few times a day, slow down, get into the present moment, and just notice your own responses to things. Because if you can't do that, you can't get to all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discomfort, and I find when I work with people, there can be a lot of, like, when we start to slow down, tears come. Like, if
Mhm.
it feels safe enough, like, you might notice that, like, I'm noticing, the anxiety is swelling. Ooh, I'm noticing that there's something here, and that's not bad. That's actually a sign that you're being present to what's here,
Yeah.
and it's only when being present to what's here, fully present to what's here, that you can actually move into the next moment cleanly.
Yeah.
So that's how I would.
I think that's a great way to end this is slowing down. I love it. We all need to slow down and be where our feet are and be present so we can do all of this and that we can also enjoy, everyone listening, Jenny's amazing new book, The Wisdom of Feeling. I am so honored for your time today and I want to thank you. Where can everyone find you?
On Instagram, I'm at the EQ School. I also post on Facebook. But my website is www.theeqschool.co, and I'll have info about classes and workshops and things there.
Yeah, you offer workshops, online courses, and even some self paced offerings as well.
Yeah, I have more of those coming out in the next month or so. So, yeah.
Yay. Well,
Mhm.
congratulations on your book and everything. And I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, it's been so lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Stay right there.